Good morning and welcome to day 4 of 365 days of Bible in a year. We are still following through the first period of the early world within the Adventure timeline. This was put together by Jeff Cavins, and my name is Pastor Jay Lutz. Today we will be going through the first book of the Torah. Remember, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And we're going to also be going through the first Psalm. So some of the things we learned in our previous time, we learned about Adam and Eve, and we learned about, we learned about Noah, and how Noah was favored because he did what God commanded him to do. Now, we read about that at the very end of last week, and actually follow along and you'll see that it's going to be repeated again in verse 5 and verse 9 and verse 16. And later we get into the part where Noah falls into sin, as we all do. Unfortunately, in this case, he gets drunk and he exposes his nakedness to his sons and causes a whole ordeal. But that's humanity for you. We don't seem to follow God for a long period of time. We often fall into some sort of trouble. And then the Psalm, we're going to be talking about Psalm 1. We do not know who the author is for this. Some think it could be King Solomon, since it's a psalm of wisdom. So just keep that in mind as we read. Anyways, let us get started. Chapter 7. The Lord then said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 2 of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive through the earth. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made." And Noah did all this that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and of all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. And after the 7 days, the floodwaters came on the earth. In the 600 years of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day all the springs of great deep burst forth. And the floodgates of the heavens were open, and the rains fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day, Noah and his son Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wives and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kind, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female, of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth. And as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. Every living thing that moved on the earth perished: birds, livestock, wild animals, and all creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Everything on the face of the earth was wiped out, men and animals and the creatures that move along the ground, and the birds of the air were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. But God remembered Noah. Chapter 8. God remembered Noah and all the wild animals, the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed, and the rains that had stopped falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the water had gone down. And on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the Mount Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. After 40 days, Noah opened the windows he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could find no place to set its feet, because there was water over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. He waited 7 more days. Again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the waters had receded from the earth. He waited 7 more days and sent out the dove again, but this time it did not return to him. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was completely dry. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number upon it." So Noah came out, together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground and all the birds, everything that move on the earth, came out of the ark, one kind after another. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." Chapter 9. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall upon all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air, upon every creature that moves along the ground, and upon all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. And for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal. And from each man, too, I will demand an account for the life of his fellow man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made man. As for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply in the earth and increase upon it." Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, and all those who came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I've set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures and every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the cloud, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and living creatures and every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, "This is a sign of the covenant I've established between me and all life on the earth." Now the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the 3 sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over all the earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's drunkenness and told his 2 brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took the garment and laid it across their shoulders, and then walked in backwards and covered their faces' nakedness. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves. Will he be to his brothers?" He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend the territories of Japheth. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his slave." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Altogether, Noah lived 950 years, and then he died. Our psalm for today is Psalm number 1. This is one of my favorite psalms, by the way, along with the first one we read, Psalm 19. Let's say it. "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the ways of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. Not so the wicked, they are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the ways of the righteous, but the ways of the wicked will perish." I think the reason I love this psalm so much is because it talks about the relationship between those who walk in God's ways and those who do not. And he gives us this promise that if we walk along with him, that we will be like trees planted. It's a beautiful scenery. For those who are outdoorsy type of people, it's very calming to sit beside a river, to hear the flow of the water. It's magical. And if I imagine that heaven being with God is like this, I can't wait. I can't wait to be in his presence. But it also talks about the ways of the wicked and those who are disobedient. And this leads us into our today's reading of Noah and the disobedience of the people, the earth, and how God sends the floodwaters upon the earth to wipe out those who don't repent, those who are disobedient of God. But he finds favor with Noah because, as I said earlier, he did what God commanded for him to do. Interesting also, when we see now the sacrificial system come into play. We see the distinction of clean animals and unclean animals. And it says, I don't know if you picked this up, but yesterday I only talked about 2 coming on the ark. But today we talk about not just 2, the 2 pairs of unclean animals come on the earth, but they also bring on 7 of the clean animals. We see this distinction now between clean and unclean animals and clean birds. There were to be 7 pairs. So it watered the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. And then we see there's this other symbolism of 150 days before the water prevailed. And then after 150 days, the water dries up. What's 150 days? Well, remember later we will be seeing about the Jubilee, that in 150 days is the time of Jubilee where the slaves will be set free, or it'll be a time of freedom. And so this is definitely a symbol of God's freedom from the water, the people's freedom from the water. Then 7 is used lots of times, right? 7 being remember in 6 days it says that God created on the 7th day he rested. So 7 days is really important because it's the fullness of the universe. And this 7 is used over and over again. 7th day, on the 7th month, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. We see a raven sent out, and then the dove it comes back with nothing. The dove is sent out. It comes back with nothing. Then he waits 7 days again, and then he gets this freshly plucked olive leaf. And then not only that, but then 7 days again, it says, he sent him out, and the dove never returned. So the 7 is being used over and over again. And 1 is also being used here. 601st, on the first month and the first day, the water goes off the earth. 1 being the symbol of creation. So that's also an important number. And then we see Noah builds an altar to God, and what does he offer? Well, he offers these clean animals. This is why they needed extra clean animals, is so that they could be there for the sacrifice, because this is the beginning of the sacrificial system with God. And so it says he offered some of all the clean animals as a sacrifice to God. And when God smelled the aroma, he said, never again will I do this again. And he says, because this, I'm not going to eradicate humanity anymore. I'm going to establish a covenant with Noah and his offspring, every living creature. And so he sends a rainbow as a sign that every single time you see this rainbow, and it doesn't say for this covenant, it says for all of time. So this covenant with Noah was not only made with Noah, but in Noah and his offspring and every creature, every living creature, every creature that has breath, he made a covenant with. And this was an everlasting covenant. The beginning, he makes a full covenant for all the earth. And it goes along with the whole idea of 7 days, because 7 days is all of creation. And this covenant encapsulates all of creation. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful imagery. Then, unfortunately, we see Noah falling into sin and him getting drunk off of his vineyard. And then we see the cursing beginning again when his son Ham doesn't cover him up, but he looks upon his nakedness. And so his descendant, Canaan, will therefore be cursed because of this. And then so Canaan will be where the promised land will be, and how they the other brothers will overtake it and become rulers, and Canaan will become their slave. So we see this foreshadowing of the later conquering of Canaan. And then what happens? It says Noah dies at 950 years of age. In a very ripe old age, he dies. And we see the end of this era. But my prayer for you is that you might know that this covenant with God, this whole covenant with the whole earth, had been established for all times, and that we're part of that covenant. Us and every living creature. And when you see a rainbow, may you be reminded the goodness of God, that God loves each and every one of us. Have a great day.